Hey, what's up? Welcome to Jam the Hype Live, where we help Christian urban artists effectively influence modern culture to live lives transformed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. My name is George Moss. I'm your host for Jam the Hype Live, joined by my co-host, Urban Youth Workers Institute Creative Director. What's up, Cherie?
Hey. How are you doing?
You know, I'm a little sick today. I think it's just a regular, sniffles, allergies, maybe a little cold or something like that happening. Trust me, it's not like pandemic. I'm about to go to the hospital, COVID-19. It's not
Lorona hasn't got you?
Nah, the Rona didn't get, I don't even know her.
Lorona? Lorona out here on these streets getting people.
Man, 2020 is tripping right now. You know, I feel like it's always, if it's not one thing, it's another. How you doing out there out in Cali?
It's
I see y'all on the news all the time. Y'all tripping.
Well, yeah, people don't want to stay inside. It's California. The sun is bright. The beach is open. So we spend a lot of time outside. I don't think the beaches are the issue, though. It's the bars and all the things. People want to go out to eat and all that stuff. So, I mean, you got to play your cards right. I think everybody's basically just, hedging their bets on if they think they're healthy enough to make it out there in these streets, but unfortunately, because everybody's taking creative license, we keep getting in trouble as a community and we keep getting shut down.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of facets to this whole pandemic thing, which is kind of weird. I just try to keep my head down and keep my head up, I guess, and focus on the most important things. Focus on my family, focus on reading scripture, and actually been focused a lot on this topic that we've been talking about these past couple of weeks, which is the artist way process of kind of unblocking ourselves as artists. I think we get so distracted by so many different things. It really blocks our creativity. And I'm excited to jump into the topic we got today, because in this chapter, we're diving into what it means to recover a sense of power. And the chapter starts off talking about anger and how anger is really one of the most powerful emotions that anyone can have. But as Christians, we're taught to, be nice about everything. And we're taught to, hide our anger, block it, medicate it, ignore it, hide it, do whatever we can do to deal with anger besides actually listen to it. And I feel like when we're not honest about our emotions, especially the emotion of anger, we don't take the action necessary. And sometimes we think that anger is sinful, but in Ephesians 4:25-27, the highlight of that, it says, "Be angry and do not sin." Like there's a time for anger. Like there's an emotion that God has given us for anger, and there's a right way to actually be angry. You can still be angry and yet not sin. But I think about this topic, about how much we have to be upset about, we had to be angry about, but we're always taught to be nice about everything. And that really drips over into our artistry and our creativity, where we stifle the authenticity of our music, of our art, of our creativeness. And I really think that's probably one of the biggest problems in urban Christian music, or Christian music in general, is that everything sounds so vanilla, everything sounds so tamed, everything sounds so, fit nicely into this little box. Even like on radio shows and podcasts, like there's never really dissent and argument that you really can have with other people, because everyone's got to be nice to one another. And until we learn how to really deal with this anger, I feel like there's going to really, I guess we'll go down and do the same thing that we've been doing, which is not having real authentic music.
Interesting. Yeah, I think anger for me personally is something I feel often, because there's just a lot going on in our world today that I think is unjust, and injustice causes me to be angry. And I used to try to hide that, but in this book it talked about anger is meant to be listened to. And so when I started thinking about that in my own life, and thinking about anger as a map to how I really feel, into my emotions, into some areas in which I need to massage out, meaning like I need to reconcile, meaning I need to come to terms with and peace with, I feel like it's really helped me to recognize that instead of stuffing it, which ends up in all kinds of unhealthy behaviors or attitudes, really just sit with it and look at it and be like, okay, why am I angry? There's nothing wrong with this. Like, it's a map to something that needs to be solved in my life. or maybe in this world, right? So anger isn't bad. So I'm using it as a map to try to get to the root of what's really wrong, or what really needs to be adjusted or fixed, not only in myself, but outwardly in this world.
Yeah. And if you're listening in the comment section down below, I want to hear like some of the things that you are just angry about, stuff that just really just makes you mad right now. And really how do you personally go about dealing with that thing? And not only do I think it affects us as artists, but especially as leaders. I know that when we are working with a team and working with other people, or working with just leading a team or leading our audiences, even if it's on social media, if we're not honest with how we feel about a certain issue and we don't bring it up and we stuff it down, all of a sudden, I feel like when we don't actually release it when it's there, we stuff it down to the point where we explode later, and then it becomes sinful. Then it becomes like, I'm speaking out of anger and I want to hurt you because of how I'm feeling, as opposed to, I'm upset right now and I love you enough to tell you exactly why I'm upset, how I'm upset. And if we don't do that as leaders, that's that we had an issue that last week, there's certain things that come on, and that's like, if you don't address those things, you're never going to be able to be the leader that you ought to be in. And I know you, in your position, Sheree, like, have been in this position and been in leadership roles all these times. Like, how have you kind of transformed by being able to handle the anger that you feel when, your team is not doing what it is that you want to do, or you have a boss that is not, understanding what you're trying to say? How have you been able to approach that as a leader?
Yeah. One of the quotes in the book that I think teases us out a little bit more is that anger should be acted upon, not acted out. So anger should be acted upon and not acted out. So it's okay for me to understand if I'm angry. It's okay for me to understand if my team is angry, and then to act upon a solution of resolving that issue, rather than not talking about the issue and just acting out because you're angry. So for me, it's just really being super honest with my team. And if I feels like something is bogus, or people aren't listening, or we're missing each other, then I just call it out. If I feel like I'm not being respected, or, honored with the things that I'm asking for, then I'll go ahead and say that. And then for my team, they're allowed to say the same things to me. 'Cause anger is something that breaks relationship. And when you break relationship, it's really, really hard to get anything done. I mean, I think everything needs to come from a place of solid relationship, and then you can move out from there. I mean, that's what marriage is. I just celebrated 14 years. So me and my husband, we yell at each other. Thank you. We get angry. I tell him about himself. He tells me about myself, but we don't act it out. We're not acting out on each other. And if we are, we know we've skipped a couple situations where we should have addressed it in the past. Yeah. So it's usually like 3 issues down the line when you start acting out. Whereas when you're acting upon, it's really in that moment when it happens, address it and move on.
And actually, now that you say about it, think about it that way, you can really tell how much you love a person and how close you are to that person when you can be angry in love. You can be angry yet still not sin. Like, I mean, off camera, you and I argue so many times. I don't know how many times that we've actually, but it's like at the end of the day, I can tell you, I can trust you with my feelings, because I know that at the end of the day, we're trying to get to the same goals together.
That's right.
And that comes with trust. That comes with actual love. And you have to, if you're not being honest about how you're feeling about something, that it's a kind of an indication that you're not actually loving that person, because anger itself is not, anger is not the action itself. Like anger is the feeling and the emotion that you get. The actions you take after you're motivated by that, that determines whether you're being in sin or whether that you are actually loving. And one of the things that I really feel like how anger should really, our first response as believers. Now, if you're not a believer and you're watching this, I'm not really quite sure what to tell you is your first response to be is anger, maybe just talking it out. But I know as believers, when we're angry about something, anger causes us to take action. And the first action we should take in anything is to go to God in prayer. And if we're not going to God in prayer for that first step to say that's the first thing that we're going to do, then we're going to find ourselves leading to where we don't want to be. Because if anger leads to action, action is one of those things that if you're going to try to be successful, if you're going to try to create art, if you're going to try to do anything, you have to take action first. And action will lead you where you ought to go. And if you ask anybody, it talks about this in the book, if you ask any successful artist how they got to where they got to go, they're never going to tell you about like the strategies they use. Like, how did you get to 1 million followers? And they're not going to tell you like, oh, followed and unfollowed a bunch of people. And like, that's not like the issue. It's not the strategy. It's the actual action that you took that led to one thing, led to another. And I realize that when you start off with prayer, God will lead you down to the path where he wants you to go. So for me, like I started out doing music. Where I'm at right now, like it's not anywhere close to where I started out as. Like I started out doing music in my basement of a church, not even wanting to go to church. And that action led to, someone asking us to perform at a youth group. And that action led another youth group to ask us to perform. And that action led for a producer asked me to come record. And that action led to me hooking up with somebody else. And one thing led to another. And 20 years later, I'm not even close to where I thought I was going to be. I'm behind a microphone. I've got a chance to do radio. I have a clothing brand. I've got so many other things that I'm doing because I didn't necessarily start out with that end goal. Like, I'm going to go to this place. More so, I started out with taking a little action step by step. And this idea of synchronicity, when you're really praying, God puts things into your path of where you should take the next right step. He doesn't always show you where you're going to go in the future, but just taking that next right step will lead you where you ought to go. And if anger doesn't lead you to prayer, it can lead you down a road where you don't want to go.
Yeah. So she talks about anger. So transitioning from anger, understanding that, we don't need to let it control us, and understand at the essence, anger is telling us when we are betrayed or when we betray ourselves. And so as she's moving through this book, she's saying, in your art, we can become angry, frustrated, maybe if we aren't hitting our goals or things we want to do, or we could be angry at other people for them getting it done before we get it done. And so she leads us to this next part, which is synchronicity, which talks about when you determine and you get past the anger of betraying yourself or someone else and in your art and putting all that out there, and you get past that, then you get into the space where you set an intention essentially about what you're going to do in your art, and then you begin to do it. And then when you begin to do it, there's a saying that says, when the artist is ready, the teacher will appear. So when you're ready, things will begin to line up and you'll start to see this flow.
Have you ever seen that in your own career where you're at, like as you were, going into the studio, making one song? How has one thing led to another to get you to where you are right now? Yep.
So here's a perfect example of a time when I was really angry. So I had, and you could look this up on Google, I tried out to be a Fanta girl. Fanta, don't you want to? Yes.
Really?
The soda.
I did not know about this.
Miss Pineapple, Coca-Cola. And basically, I made it to the top 3 in the nation, and I made a whole commercial, a whole jingle for them. I was determined I was going to be Miss Pineapple. The reality is I just really love all things pop culture. And so to me, this was like iconic. Like, what if I could be this iconic pop Coca-Cola Fanta girl? Anyway, I wanted to be a positive role model. And what I noticed in the contest is there was a lot of girls who were using other antics beyond their talent to stand out. So, wearing, bikini tops, or like doing sexual poses in their dances, or just being overly sexy to sell soda. And I'm thinking, first of all, young girls drink this stuff, right? So why do I want to come off like that? So I had gone out there with my skateboard. I was like Sporty Spice with the Spice Girls, that kind of vibe. Anyway, it was great. And I really feel like I had the best product to offer Coca-Cola as a Fanta girl. But they picked a really sexy candidate and she won, and it was devastating. And I cried so hard when I got the news that I wasn't going to make it beyond the top 3. And I remember crying, and my husband was just like, "What is wrong with you? It was just some weird wacko commercial. Like, why are you letting this destroy you?" And I was like, I think it's deeper. I think that the truth is that sex really does sell. And it sells anything, even soda. And so I was like, so what chance do I have of fulfilling my dream of being a positive role model a positive artist for girls, even if like something that I would consider a clean brand, such as Coca-Cola, wouldn't even want that. So he was like, well, what are you going to do about it? And so then I was like, yeah, I was kind of angry I didn't win. And then I just took that anger and I said, you know what? I'm going to be that positive role model. I'm going to make my own brand that's clean and positive and fun and all the things that I think the world needs from a pop artist, a female pop artist. And so I did. And that's how One Girl Can Change the World came out. And I went in the studio and we wrote that tune. And my, the 2 albums after that basically were soundtracks for young teen girls' lives. And it was fun and it was full of God and it was awesome. So that's how that turned. And when I made that turn, that's when like the right producer, arrived and the right songs came and the right tribe of girls decided to start following me and the right bookings happened. So I know it's a kind of a crazy story, but that really did happen. And it was one time that I had to get over.
That's exactly how things do happen. There was you didn't plan on that. You didn't have that in your strategy, but it's just more you taking action to go out and to pursue something and to actually go out and do it, which then led you down one path because obviously God had his hand on you where he didn't want you to into a position where that's where you had to sell. Like you had to sell sex in order for you to sell Coke. Like that wasn't
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. I didn't even think.
Yes.
No, but like that's just the idea that it's never one single strategy. Where you think you're going at the outset is never where you're going to end up going. It's always taking that next right step and trusting that when God answers prayer, it's not always what you think should happen. In fact, it almost never is. In fact, if you think you have a plan, God's going to laugh at that. It's like, I'm going to send you where I want you to be. And that's walking in his will is the best way to actually pursue a career is taking the next step that God leads you to. But I know for me, when I first started to taste a little bit of success and I would have a little bit of like recognition just in my little local town of things. I got this job at a radio station and, I kind of got to this point where I was thinking I've got this now and I'm going to do things on my own. And to make a long story short, like I met this girl when I was in high school and we got together and, I thought she was in youth group at school and I was or youth group at church. I was in youth group at a church and we were both church kids and we can, make a real relationship work together. And the more I spent time with her, the less and less time I spent in prayer to God. Like it became about my relationship with her. And I realized the further and further away I've got from God, the more and more I started to look just like the rest of the world and wanted to pursue the music industry like the rest of the world. And long story short, a couple years later after meeting her, we end up having a baby. And now I am in church and I'm this goody two shoes kid that has this reputation of being a Christian rapper. And now I'm the same like deadbeat dad that that everyone expects you to be. I'm the same kid that, oh, you got your girlfriend pregnant, you're nothing. And it was at that time where I've never felt so much shame and hurt from the people that I thought were supposed to be loving and forgiving. And you want that. But at that time, I felt like I should just quit. I should never even pursue this path. And one of those things and gratefully, by the grace of God, I really, again, that's one of those things where she talks about synchronicity. There's no consequences. It was in that time where I was trying to pursue like the music industry that I got connected with a guy named Michael Fugit. We started this band called Union. And the thing is, I read every single music industry book that there was. If you look at my shelf now, I've got tons of music industry books. I've read every single one of them. I wanted to be a music industry. I studied music industry law. I tried to do everything to try to hustle to make it in the music industry, figure out how to make money doing this. And when I hooked up with Michael during this time of like shame and wanting to quit, he was that guy, like almost like this angel in my life, where he didn't care anything about money at all. He cared about sharing the gospel. Like he didn't care about anything on that stuff. So of all the church friends and stuff that I grew up with, the only person that was there that really walked me through this process was a guy that didn't care about music industry success. He just cared about the gospel, made sure that I knew it, made sure that I experienced the gift of God, the gift of salvation, the gift of forgiveness. In that one area that I felt the most shame is the thing that really changed the trajectory of my entire life. So it's one thing to know that God is going to put things in your path, but sometimes you go into these situations, you're shamed into feeling like you should just quit and to give up. Like, have you ever had any situation in your career growing up where it's like either you felt just ashamed of yourself or someone has tried to make you feel ashamed and it somehow blocked you from actually being the creative that you are?
I think shame is just, it's kind of a natural emotion that happens consistently for me as an artist, because to me, shame, it seeks to embarrass us. So when
Mhm.
you're standing in front of a whole bunch of people that you do not know, bearing your art, singing a song that you wrote, using your naked voice before all the people, I think there is this sense of vulnerability. And what shame says is, you're going to embarrass yourself. You're going to embarrass yourself. There, you know. And so I feel like as artists, for me personally, it's something I always have to deal with. It's not really one moment where this happened, but it's the space where I recognize that doing art is a vulnerable thing to do, but when done well, it can really be powerful. So you have to take the risk if you're going to be an artist to expose yourself and your true feelings. And I think when you are the most vulnerable is when you are most powerful. So shame has to
I
go.
agree. And I think they want to, people want to make you feel ashamed
Mm-hmm.
because it blocks your power, because
Mm-hmm.
it steals the power away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And shame itself is a controlling device. It makes you controlled. Now, if you look in scripture and you dive into it, especially the actual the Hebrew culture
Hmm.
that the Bible was written in, it was a very much so an honor and shame society. If you go to Israel today, it's very much so honor and shame society.
Hmm.
Like in America, our mindset is, oh, I'm gonna live in this house, I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna get out on my own and go create my own family.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it is over there. Like over there, it's like we're gonna grow you up here, but you're building our legacy as a family name.
Mm-hmm.
You don't live your life based upon your name. You live your life based upon your last name and what it represents. So there's a place for shame, especially as believers, to say that should control us to say, look, I'm that's what shame is. What say I would be ashamed of myself if I got on a Fanta commercial, um, in a in a bikini trying to
Yes.
sell soda. Like
Yeah,
you would be ashamed,
I would.
and rightfully you should be. But that's because God doesn't want you to be in that shame, because we live in a shameless society. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and this shameless society leads to sin, and sin leads to death.
Mm.
But so there's a place for shame. There's a place for shame in our music. However, when we allow that shame of being honest and
Mm-hmm.
truthful, it really steals our power, because the most powerful songs are the ones that you're vulnerable, and you're vulnerable about your sin, you're vulnerable about your doubts. You're willing to cry, to be able to be hurt, to be able to show and expose yourself that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like God has given us these emotions, not to say to let people know that we feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we try to hide it, the more we try to stuff it, the more we try to put our suit on, tie our ties tight, and make sure that everything looks perfect for a Sunday morning, the less and less power we have, and the more the enemy has a stronghold for us,
Mm-hmm.
to not be able to make the impact that we ought to be making.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one of those things for me is the most shameful thing as an artist could be when you pour your heart and your soul into a song, or
Mm-hmm.
to a record, or
Mm-hmm.
to a Instagram post, or to an article or a blog, whatever it might be,
Mm-hmm.
and then you put it out into the world. We have to realize who and when we should share our art with other people,
Mm-hmm.
because people can easily come and destroy us. Like this book, it talks about how our creativity is like our inner artist child, and that
Mm-hmm.
artist child needs to be protected. It
Mm-hmm.
needs to be nurtured. It needs to have the confidence built. And when we expose our art to an audience that doesn't know how to handle it, or is unfamiliar with it, or some, like, I think we discount the fact that we need yes men sometimes, like especially in our world. It's like, man, I don't want no yes men. I want people to tell me the truth. Like, when you hear my first demo, I don't need the truth. I need to build the confidence in what I need to do to make it better. Like,
Mm-hmm.
now there's a time and a place where you need constructive criticism, but getting constructive criticism before you're ready for constructive criticism can be super, super damaging. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that comes from mostly just critics. Like, I know one of the things for me that really, I mean, literally hurt me. And I'm ashamed to admit it, but I'm to be honest to admit it. Like, I came out with a song called Hands Up. And it was one of my biggest songs. And like, it was one of those things that the video was cool. It got shot and they started getting played on radio. People would send me texts from Disney, like somehow Disney picked up the video and it was playing at like Planet Fitnesses all over the country. I don't even know how it happened. And I was so proud of that, that song, but it got reviewed on one of the Christian hip hop websites. And I never felt so much shame. Like, this isn't Christian music. This isn't like other people's opinion. Especially at that time when I was just brand new into, having any sort of success like that. It really stifled my career. It stifled me being able to create. And it's not necessarily because, just be honest, as an artist, I don't have thick skin. Like, I'm not a politician. I didn't sign up to be a politician. And a lot of times as artists, we don't have thick skin and that stuff gets to you. And I mean, I'm ashamed that it stopped me from doing a lot of things. But at the same time, I'm being honest in the fact that those people say sticks and stones will break your bones. Words never hurt you. I mean, yeah, they do. Words hurt big time. How have you dealt with criticism in the past, whether it be a blog or people that don't know you on Instagram? Like, have you had those type of experiences?
Yeah. I think you have to be careful, like you said, who you're allowing to speak into your life. And I think social media has made that extremely difficult because when you put yourself out there, everybody can have an opinion and say whatever they want. I've had so many experiences like this, but I guess one that comes to mind would be when I first started out singing. I love pop music, so I've said this many times. So I was really impressed by some of the art direction that was coming out of Lady Gaga's camp. Not all the crazy stuff, but there was some other things that were really cool and artistic. So I incorporated some of that aesthetic into my show. And I remember after, it was like one of my first shows, it was with Royal Taylor. If you guys know who that used to be, It was, what's his name? Torrin Wells, old band. Anyway, so I got to open up for them, which was really cool. So it was a very exciting time for me. Anyway, brought in some of those pop Lady Gaga-ish like aesthetics. And I was really excited about what we put together and really excited about that time. But again, like right after the show, some hipster guy gets on there and starts like giving a review on my Facebook page of my show. And it was just basically saying like, it's too Lady Gaga-ish, it's not Christian, similar things to what you were just saying, judging the art and creativity by saying that it basically wasn't whitewashed enough for a Christian show. So, and I remember that hurt because I was like, oh, I thought it was so creative and it was very modern. And then I just realized at that point, my audience wasn't the white hipster dude. Like, the little girls loved it. So, and I loved it. And so I was like, all right, cool. Well, glad he doesn't like it because he's not my audience. So I think I usually take criticism from people who I actually care about their opinion. Like they actually are somebody that can valuably speak into that situation. A friend of mine, Alexander James, told me, he said, Sheree, I don't let everybody speak into everything in my life. Like I have people who speak into my preaching. He's a preacher. I have people that I allow to speak into my spoken word. I have people who I allow to speak into my music, and they're not all the same people. You have to earn the right to speak into my talent and my gift. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I think that's one of the biggest things as an artist, and as a new artist, it's hard to do, especially when you're not around and surrounded with people. It talks about in this book how you should not allow your inner artist child to play with poisonous playmates. We talked about that last week, and like I know for my children, I watch who they play with, and I'm not just going to let them play with anybody because they can abuse them, they can destroy them, they can cause scars that are damaging later on. But when you've been around other people and you've been around the people that you are around your tribe and you know who you're making music for, and as an older, artist now and having experienced a lot of those things, like I really don't care what those critics say because I'm like, literally like, looking back on it now, I'm like, I'm sitting up here upset about these people, what they had to say because I cared so much about their, expertise in Christian hip hop. But I'm like, I'm the only one of everyone that was on that list that was on tour and doing, music for a living and actually making an impact with people and all that. And sometimes we focus on just this little bitty, speck, this little bitty irritating thing that, it's the squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's kind of how it is. And like all of, we can have, 1,000 great reviews. And then that one review that's just, that just says something like off the wall to you. That's the one we focus on. And as an artist now, I can realize that, man, I don't got to focus on that. And also, I make sure to surround myself with people that know, one, that I'm mature enough to know how to give constructive criticism. Now, there's a time for criticism. Like, if I'm getting ready to put something out, don't let me get on American Idol stage if I know I can't sing. Don't let me put out the song if I'm off beat.
I got you.
However, there's a way that you do stuff in love and as you do stuff in the process. Honestly, once you have a finished product and it's out on iTunes, there's no need for criticism. It's done. The next thing you need as a friend and as how to handle that now is not to criticize what you've already done. Is to say on your next project, this is what you can do better.
There you go.
Because you're thinking about how you can do something better. And I think that's how I deal with criticism at this point in time. Like, I don't think about what I've done and how bad this was or all the mistakes that I've made, because we've made a ton of mistakes. Even on this podcast, I made a ton of mistakes on 1.5 million different typos. I mean, there's anything that you
yes, that just happened to me
today. Dwelling on the mistakes that I've made doesn't help anything, but understanding how I can take that mistake and learn how to move forward is what helps me to be a better creative as an artist. So one of those things that I'm very excited about doing that I didn't have in the past was an actual group of people that were surrounded me with positivity, constructive criticism, and with the maturity to know when to give constructive criticism and when to give hey, that was good on this part, continue to do that, that type of thing. And that's what we're trying to create with the Jam the Hype Artist Development Group. We have a community of artists that want to get together to be able to love one another, to encourage one another, inspire one another, to live lives transformed by the gospel of Christ, be able to make and create music that way, art that way, and to be able to lead our audience to live inspired that way too. So I'll leave a link in the comment if you want to join the Jam the Hype Society. Definitely want to have you be a part of that group. If you're an artist and you feel like you would benefit from this type of stuff, we want to have you join as well.
I think it's important, real quick, to reframe criticism. So for instance, when I was in Chicago and did Taste of Chicago, which I was really excited about that show as well, because it was not a Christian venue. So I was like, all right, this is cool. Great way to get out there and do positive music in a public space in my hometown. So excited about that show. And then I read the reviews, in the local paper, and it was not a Christian paper. And the person who was writing the review said, it's what you would expect from a basic pop show. Now, I could have gotten upset about that and been like, basic pop show, what you would expect. No, I wanted it to be, it was amazing, about all the other things. But here's the other way to think about it. And my husband pointed this out. He was like, Cherie, at least he said it was a pop show. Like that was your intention, right? Absolutely, 100%. I was like, okay, cool. So I'm definitely hitting my target as far as what I am trying to make, and I want it to be recognized as. So sometimes you just have to reframe it too, and then figure out how you're gonna hit them next time. So it's not basic. But I had some of it right.
Yeah. But there's so much that we cover in this chapter and so much we cover in this book. If you want to be a part of the Artist Way journey, to understand what it means to recover your sense of power, your identity, and all the other things that we're going to talk about. Love to have you join the Jam the Hype Artist Development Group. I keep on calling it Jam the Hype Society because that's what it was. The Jam the Hype Society is now the Jam the Hype Artist Development Group. We're really going to focus on helping develop an artist and be able to walk you through this Artist Way process. So I'll leave a link in the description in the comments if you want to join, or check the link in our Instagram bio.
Thanks for tuning in. Hey guys, if you liked this episode and you think it would benefit someone that you know, go ahead and share it, tag us, and we'd love to hear from you. So hit us in the DMs or send us a message on Facebook.
All right, next week we're going to be talking about recovering the sense of integrity. So make sure that you tune in for that one. That's going to be a very good one. We'll talk about that next week. But of course, like, subscribe, comment, like we already said, and join us for Talkback Tuesday coming up this Tuesday on Instagram, where we get a chance to, check up on you and see what you've been doing this week. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all later.
Peace.
Peace.